Marcus Chen lay motionless in the rubble of what used to be humanity's forward operating base on Kepler 442b. Blood seeped through his combat suit where shrapnel had torn through the advanced fabric. His left arm hung useless at his side, broken in 3 places. But his eyes remained sharp, focused through the scope of his modified M99 Devastator rifle. The Galactic Council's assault had been swift and brutal. They came without warning, their silver ships darkening the orange sky of this distant world. The Council had deemed humanity too dangerous, too unpredictable to join their perfectly ordered federation of species. Their solution was simple: eliminate the human military presence across the frontier colonies. Marcus watched through his scope as Council soldiers moved through the smoking ruins. These weren't the fragile Zephyrians with their hollow bones or the sluggish Morteki. These were Kravor shock troops, 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor plating, bred for war over millennia. Each one could tear a human apart with their bare hands. The sniper's breathing was shallow, controlled, despite the pain screaming through his body. His squad was gone. Lieutenant Rodriguez had been vaporized in the first orbital strike. Patel and Jackson died holding the eastern perimeter. Williams lasted longest, her machine gun chattering defiance until a plasma bolt took her head clean off. Now it was just Marcus, buried under concrete and twisted metal, forgotten in their haste to declare the base cleared. The Kravor commander, distinguished by his crimson shoulder plates, stood barely 800 meters away. An easy shot for someone of Marcus's skill, even with his injuries. But Marcus didn't take the shot, not yet. He watched, memorized their patrol patterns, noted their equipment, observed their weaknesses. The Council forces were efficient, but they had made one critical error. They assumed all humans fought the same way. As darkness fell over the ruins, the Council forces established their own base. They were in no hurry. After all, they had eliminated the human threat on this world. Their reports would show complete success. No survivors. Marcus waited until the deepest part of night. The pain had become a constant companion, but pain meant he was still alive. Alive meant he could fight. He had once gone 72 hours without sleep during the siege of New Kabul on Earth. This was nothing. Moving with agonizing slowness, he extracted himself from the rubble. Every motion was calculated to avoid detection by the Council's sensors. His suit's stealth systems were damaged but not completely dead. It would have to be enough. The medical kit in his pack had survived. Military-grade stims and biofoam could keep him functional for days, though the crash afterwards might kill him. Marcus didn't care about afterwards. He had work to do. He found a new position. A collapsed communications tower that gave him clear sight lines across the Council encampment. His rifle's power cell showed 32 shots remaining, more than enough if he was smart about it. The first kill came at dawn. A Morteki technician working on their shield generator, separated from the others. The hypervelocity round punched through his environmental suit and primary brainstem before he even knew he was in danger. The suppressor technology kept the shot whisper quiet. Marcus was already moving before the body hit the ground. Rule 1 of sniper warfare: never fire twice from the same position. It took them 3 hours to find the body. By then, Marcus had eliminated 2 more targets, a Zephyrian scout and another Morteki, this one an officer judging by his insignia. Each kill was precise, patient, designed to maximize confusion. The Kravor commander roared orders, sending patrols in every direction. They found nothing. Marcus had learned to move like the ghosts of human legend, leaving no trace, no sign of his passing. The biofoam had stopped his bleeding, and the stims kept his mind sharp despite the fever building from his untreated wounds. On the second night, he got creative. The Council forces had deployed motion sensors around their perimeter. Marcus spent hours belly-crawling through their fields, placing small charges from the destroyed base's armory. Not enough to do real damage, but enough to cause chaos. When he detonated them in sequence, the Council forces reacted exactly as he predicted. They rushed to defensive positions, shields up, weapons ready, and in their haste, they exposed themselves. 4 shots, 4 kills, including the Cravor second in command. Now they were scared. Marcus could see it in their movements, the way they huddled together, the way they flinched at shadows. These warriors who had conquered 100 worlds were being hunted by a single wounded human, and they knew it. The commander called for reinforcements. Marcus listened on their communications, his suit's translator turning their alien languages into English. 2 days until help arrived. He smiled grimly. 2 days was a lifetime in war. He began leaving messages. A council soldier would find their companion dead with a simple note. "You should have made sure we were all dead." Another would discover human playing cards placed over the eyes of the deceased. Psychological warfare was humanity's specialty. By the 4th day, the council forces had lost 11 soldiers. They had yet to catch a glimpse of their attacker. The remaining troops were exhausted, paranoid, jumping at every sound. The Cravor commander had stopped sleeping, his 4 eyes bloodshot with fatigue. Marcus wasn't doing much better. The stims were wearing off, and his body was failing. His left arm was infected, the smell of rot mixing with the ozone stench of the battlefield. He had maybe 48 hours before his body shut down completely. But he had learned something vital during his hunt. The Council's communication protocols, their shield frequencies, their tactical doctrines, all of it was now burned into his memory. Information that could save human lives if he could get it back to command. On the 5th night, he made his move. The Council had pulled back to a single fortified position, abandoning any pretense of controlling the area. They were waiting for rescue, nothing more. Marcus positioned himself on a ridge overlooking their camp, his rifle steady despite his trembling hands. The commander emerged from his command post, and Marcus centered his crosshairs on the alien's head. It would be so easy. 1 shot to end the architect of the massacre. Instead, Marcus shifted his aim to the communications array. His shot destroyed their long-range transmitter, cutting them off from the incoming reinforcements. The second shot took out their backup system. Now they were truly alone. The panic was instant. Soldiers fired wildly into the darkness while their commander bellowed for order. Marcus had already moved, circling around to their vehicle depot. Explosive charges from their own supplies turned their transports into burning wreckage. He left them 1 small emergency beacon, its range limited to planetary distances. Let them call for help that wouldn't come for days or weeks. Let them know what it felt like to be hunted, to be helpless, to watch their numbers dwindle 1 by 1. As the sun rose on the 6th day, Marcus made his final transmission. His suit's quantum entanglement communicator had just enough power for 1 burst to the nearest human fleet. He sent everything, tactical data, shield frequencies, patrol patterns, psychological profiles, a treasure trove of intelligence bought with blood. The response came back immediately. "Message received. Hold position. Extraction in 17 hours. Marcus laughed, a harsh sound that tasted of copper. 17 hours. He looked down at his failing body, at the infection spreading up his arm, at the blood he couldn't stop coughing up. 17 hours might as well be 17 years. But he had one last card to play. The Council forces had found his latest firing position, were advancing in formation. Perfect. Marcus activated the dead man's switch he'd rigged, connected to the cache of explosives he'd hidden days ago. He stood up, letting them see him clearly for the first time. A single human, wounded, dying, but unbroken. The Cravor commander stared at him across the distance, and Marcus saw something in those alien eyes he hadn't expected. Respect. Marcus raised his rifle one last time, not to shoot, but in salute. Then he vanished into the rocks as the Council forces gave chase. They thought they were hunting him, They didn't realize he was leading them exactly where he wanted. The explosion, when it came, shook the earth. Marcus had led them straight into a canyon lined with enough ordnance to level a city block. The geography focused the blast, turning the narrow passage into a funeral pyre for anyone foolish enough to follow. From his new position, Marcus watched the survivors retreat to their fortified camp. They were down to less than half strength, their leadership dead, their morale shattered. All because they had failed to confirm one human sniper was dead. As he waited for extraction, fighting to stay conscious, Marcus reflected on the Council's mistake. They saw humanity as just another species to be cataloged, controlled, or eliminated. They didn't understand that humans had evolved as persistence predators, that their ancestors had literally run prey to death across prehistoric savannas. They didn't understand that a human with nothing left to lose was the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. The extraction ship found him unconscious but alive, his rifle still clutched in his hands. The intelligence he provided would prove invaluable in the war to come. But more than that, the story of the lone sniper who had terrorized a council battalion would spread through human space like wildfire. The Galactic Council had wanted to break humanity's spirit. Instead, they had created a legend. And as every human soldier knew, legends never die. Marcus Chen survived his wounds, though he would never fight again. His left arm had to be amputated, and the damage to his lungs was permanent. But when asked if he had any regrets, he would simply smile and say, "They should have made sure I was dead." The Council would learn, in the battles to come, that leaving any human alive on the field was a mistake. Because humans didn't just fight to win, they fought to make sure their enemies never forgot why they should have feared them in the first place. And somewhere in the archives of the Galactic Council, in files marked with the highest security classifications, there remains a simple notation. Human military personnel are to be considered extremely dangerous even when wounded. Recommend complete verification of termination in all encounters. It was a lesson written in blood on a distant world, taught by a single sniper who refused to die. The Council had made one fatal mistake. They had wounded a human and left him alive. They would not make that mistake again. But by then, it was already too late. The war had begun, and humanity had remembered what they did best: survive, adapt, and overcome, no matter the odds. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, studying the tactical display with cold fury. The reports from Kepler 442b had spread through the human fleet like wildfire. Her nephew Marcus had survived, but barely. More importantly, the intelligence he'd provided was reshaping their entire understanding of Council warfare. "Admiral, the Council is broadcasting on all channels," her communications officer reported. "They're demanding we surrender and submit to their authority." Sarah's lips curved in a smile that held no warmth. "Put them through." The holographic image of Executor Vaxnil materialized before her. The Altarian's 6 eyes regarded her with what passed for contempt among his species. "Admiral Chen, you will order your forces to stand down immediately. The Council's decision is final. Humanity is too volatile to be permitted autonomous military operations." "Executor," Sarah replied calmly, "are you familiar with human history? Specifically a man named Admiral Yamamoto?" The alien's feathers ruffled in confusion. "Your historical figures are irrelevant. After Pearl Harbor, he said, 'I fear all we have done is awaken a sleeping giant. You attacked our colonies, you killed our people, and you left survivors to tell the tale.'" Her voice hardened. "Congratulations. The giant is awake." She cut the transmission and turned to her bridge crew. "Signal the fleet. Operation Persistence begins now." Across human space, the transformation was remarkable. The attack on Kepler 442b wasn't the first Council aggression, but it was the catalyst that united humanity like nothing before. Factory worlds retooled overnight for military production. Civilian ships were retrofitted with weapons. Most importantly, the story of the lone sniper spread from world to world, becoming a rallying cry. The Council had expected humanity to crumble. They had studied human history, seen the divisions, the internal conflicts. What they failed to understand was that humans had a peculiar trait. They fought each other viciously until an external threat appeared. Then they became something else entirely. On Mars, drill instructors incorporated Marcus Chen's tactics into their training. One human with a rifle changed the course of a battle, they would bark at recruits. What will you do with yours? On Earth, children played sniper and council in the streets. The game always ended the same way, the lone human winning against impossible odds. But it was in space where humanity's response truly shocked the Council. They had expected fleet battles, traditional warfare they could counter with superior numbers and technology. Instead, they got something far worse. Humanity went asymmetric. Captain James Morrison commanded a converted cargo hauler, officially designated as UES M2847, but known to her crew as Spite. The ship was ugly, slow, and according to Council tactical doctrine, barely worth noticing, which made her perfect for what came next. Dropping out of hyperspace in 3, 2, 1 a mark, his navigator announced. The Spite materialized in the Vega system, home to a major Council supply depot. The station's defenders barely registered their arrival, just another human cargo ship, probably surrendering or seeking passage to safer space. They were still thinking that when Morrison's crew launched their payload, not missiles or torpedoes, but small, stealthed pods that attached to the station's hull like barnacles. Each one contained a simple message in Council standard. Remember Kepler 442b. Then they detonated. The station survived. Morrison had no interest in killing civilians, but their shield generators, weapon systems, and drive cores were slag. It would take months to repair, months where Council forces would go without supplies. By the time reinforcements arrived, the Spite was long gone, vanishing back into hyperspace to strike somewhere else. And they were far from alone. Across the galaxy, human ships appeared without warning. They hit supply lines, communication relays, isolated patrols. Never major battles, never direct confrontations with Council main fleets. Just constant, unending pressure. The Council called it terrorism. Humans called it Tuesday. On the colony world of Haven, Lieutenant Maria Santos led her platoon in what the media was calling ghost warfare. The Council had occupied the planet months ago, installing a garrison of 10,000 troops to maintain order. Maria had started with 50 soldiers. After 3 months of ambushes, sabotage, and psychological operations, the Council garrison was down to 6,000, and those remaining jumped at shadows. The thing about humans, she explained to a new recruit as they prepared another night raid, is we're persistence predators. Our ancestors didn't need to be the fastest or strongest. They just needed to outlast their prey. The Council thinks this is about winning battles, but it's about breaking their will to fight. The raid that night destroyed another supply convoy. By morning, the Council commander had requested 3 times his current garrison to maintain control. His request was denied. Those troops were needed elsewhere, fighting other human ghosts. But perhaps the most devastating blow came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elizabeth Harper had spent years studying at the Council's premier Xenobiology Institute. When the war began, the Council expelled all humans from their core worlds, considering them security risks. They didn't realize Dr. Harper had spent those years doing more than just studying. She had been analyzing their biology, their psychology, their fundamental weaknesses, and she had been sharing that information with human intelligence services. The Zephyrians, her report read, have hollow bones to enable flight on their low-gravity homeworld. This makes them extremely vulnerable to sonic weapons. Frequency range 1822 kHz causes immediate disorientation. Morteki have distributed nervous systems with 17 separate neural clusters. Conventional center mass shots are ineffective. Recommended targeting points attached. Kravor natural armor is thickest on chest and back, thinnest at joint articulations. Their warrior culture prevents them from acknowledging wounds until physically incapacitated. Use of chemical agents that cause gradual paralysis recommended. Every human soldier received these updates to their tactical systems. Suddenly, the Council's diverse coalition became a liability. Each species required different tactics to fight effectively, while humans only needed to remember one rule: adapt and overcome. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The great chamber that had seen the rise and fall of empires now echoed with something they hadn't heard in centuries: fear. The humans are not fighting according to established conventions, the Morteki representative complained. They refuse to engage in decisive battles. My world has seen 17 separate attacks in the last month, the Zephyrian delegate added. Small strikes that damage critical infrastructure and vanish. We cannot defend everything. Executor Vaxnil raised his primary appendages for silence. They are primitives using primitive tactics. We simply need to apply sufficient force. With respect, Executor, the Kravor warlord growled. We have applied force. We outnumber them 5-1. We have superior technology. Yet they persist. Because we allow them to, Vaxnil declared. No more half measures. I am ordering the deployment of Extinction Protocol. A shocked silence filled the chamber. Extinction Protocol hadn't been used in 300 years. It meant the complete annihilation of a species, down to the last child. Surely that is excessive, the Altarian peace faction representative ventured. Perhaps negotiation... The time for negotiation passed when they refused to submit, Vaxnil interrupted. Humanity will serve as an example to any who would defy council authority. But even as they voted to approve the protocol, reports continued to stream in. A council battleship discovered with its entire crew dead, killed by a bioweapon tailored to their specific physiologies. A military station's AI turned against its masters, broadcasting human propaganda before self-destructing. An entire fleet trapped in hyperspace after humans somehow corrupted their navigation systems. The Council had fought rebellions before. They had crushed species that defied them. But they had never faced an enemy that turned their every strength into a weakness, that treated war not as a contest of honor, but as a problem to be solved by any means necessary. On a dozen worlds, Council occupation forces found themselves fighting not just human military, but human civilians. Teachers who poisoned water supplies, doctors who introduced carefully designed diseases, engineers who built infrastructure with hidden fatal flaws. Every human is a potential combatant, one Kravor commander reported to his superiors. Their children throw stones, their elderly sabotage equipment. We cannot tell soldier from civilian because to them, there is no difference. The Council's response was predictable: increased brutality. They began destroying human settlements in retaliation for attacks. They executed civilians suspected of resistance activity. They turned their advanced weapons on population centers, and in doing so, they sealed their fate, because for every human they killed, 10 more took up arms. For every city they destroyed, a dozen ships joined the Shadow Fleet. The Council had forgotten that humans were a species that had survived ice ages, plagues, and nuclear war. They thrived on adversity. In her command center on Terra Nova, General Patricia Williams reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The Council was massing their extinction fleet near the Arcturus system. 300 of their most powerful warships, enough firepower to crack planets. They still don't understand, her aide commented. They think this is about military defeat. Williams nodded. They're fighting the last war. We're fighting the next one. Send word to all commands. Operation Darwin is approved. Across human space, carefully hidden assets began to move. Ships that had been playing dead powered up. Soldiers who had spent months infiltrating council facilities received their activation codes. Scientists initiated programs years in the making. The council thought they were about to end humanity. They had no idea they were about to face evolution in action. Natural selection accelerated by human ingenuity and desperation. The war was entering its next phase, and the Council was about to learn why humanity had named it after the father of evolutionary theory. In nature, it wasn't the strongest that survived, or the smartest. It was the most adaptable. And humans had been adapting to existential threats since they first came down from the trees. The Council had wounded them, threatened them with extinction. But they had also given them the one thing that made humans most dangerous. A reason to show the galaxy exactly what kind of predator evolution had created on a small blue world in an unremarkable corner of the galaxy. The extinction fleet began its journey toward human space, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They would arrive to find that humans had evolved once again, not over millions of years, but in months. Evolution through technology, evolution through tactics, evolution through sheer bloody-minded determination to survive. The Council had made one fatal mistake. They had assumed humans would fight like everyone else. They were about to learn why humans had a saying, improvise, adapt, overcome. The real war was about to begin. The Council's extinction fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system in perfect formation. 300 warships, each one capable of devastating entire continents. Admiral Krextor of the Kravor commanded from the flagship Inevitable Victory, his 4 eyes scanning the tactical displays. "Where are the human defenses?" his tactical officer asked, confusion evident in his voice. The space around Earth appeared empty. No defense platforms, no fleet formations, not even civilian traffic. Just the blue marble of humanity's homeworld spinning quietly in the void. "Scan for cloaked vessels," Krextor ordered. "This must be a trap." But their scans revealed nothing. Earth seemed to have been abandoned. The only sign of human presence was a single transmission broadcasting on all channels. "This is Marcus Chen," the message began, and Krextor recognized the name, the sniper from Kepler 442b who had started this war. "Speaking for united humanity. You came to exterminate us. You failed before you began. Watch and learn why." The transmission ended, replaced by a countdown timer. 3 minutes. Krextor felt unease creep up his spine. "All ships, maintain formation, weapons hot. Whatever they're planning—" He never finished the sentence. Space itself seemed to scream. Every hyperspace beacon in a 50-light-year radius activated simultaneously, not to guide ships, but to destabilize local space-time. The carefully maintained corridors that allowed faster-than-light travel began to collapse and twist. The extinction fleet found themselves trapped in a bubble of distorted reality, unable to advance or retreat. "Impossible!" the science officer gasped. "The power requirements alone—" "Sir!" the communications officer interrupted. "Multiple contacts emerging from everywhere." They came from the asteroid belt, where humans had spent months hollowing out rocks and turning them into hidden bases. They emerged from the gas giants' moons, launching from camouflaged facilities. They appeared from behind sensor-blocking fields that had taken years to perfect. But these weren't the cobbled-together ships the Council expected. These vessels were something new, something that shouldn't have been possible for a species that had only achieved faster-than-light travel in the last century. The UES Vengeance led the assault. Captain Lisa Park commanded a ship that defied classification, part battleship, part carrier, part something else entirely. Her crew was a mixture of military personnel and civilians, engineers, scientists, even artists. Because humans had learned that in war, creativity was just as important as firepower. "Launch the swarm," Park ordered. From the Vengeance's hull, thousands of tiny drones erupted. Each one was barely larger than a baseball, equipped with minimal shielding and a single-shaped charge. Individually, they were gnats against the Council's mighty warships. Collectively, they were death by 1,000 cuts. The drones didn't attack randomly. They had been programmed with every weakness Dr. Harper had discovered, every vulnerability Marcus Chen had observed, every flaw that human intelligence had uncovered. They targeted specific systems on specific ships, turning the Council's diversity against them. Zephyrian vessels found their atmospheric processors compromised, forcing their hollow-boned crews to choose between suffocation and evacuation. More techie ships discovered their distributed computer networks corrupted, different neural clusters receiving conflicting commands. The Cravor warships, built for devastating frontal assaults, couldn't adapt to attacks that came from every direction at once. But the drones were just the beginning. From Earth itself, hidden installations revealed weapons that violated several Council treaties humanity had never signed. Particle beams that punched through shields like tissue paper, gravity manipulators that crushed ship hulls from the inside, and most terrifying of all, weapons that targeted not ships, but minds. The psionic amplifiers had been Dr. Harper's masterpiece. Humans were largely immune to psychic attacks, a quirk of evolution that had made them oddities in a galaxy where most species had some telepathic ability. But that immunity went both ways. They couldn't project, but they could broadcast. Every human on Earth, every colony, every ship in the fleet, focused their thoughts on a single concept: survival. The raw, primal need to exist, to fight, to refuse extinction. Amplified and directed, it hit the Council fleet like a tsunami of pure determination. Telepathic species reeled under the assault. The ordered thoughts that had made the Council's coordination so effective shattered against the chaotic storm of human will. Ships began firing on each other as crews lost the ability to distinguish friend from foe. Admiral Krextor watched his perfect fleet descend into madness. Half his ships were disabled or destroyed. The rest were fighting each other as much as the humans. And through it all, that countdown timer continued its relentless march toward zero. "What happens at zero?" he demanded of his bridge crew, but they had no answers. He got his answer 30 seconds later. Jupiter. The system's gas giant began to collapse. Not naturally, but controlled. Directed by machines humanity had been building in its depths for months. The planet's mass compressed, 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 and ignited. For a brief moment, the Sol system had two suns. The fusion reaction was unsustainable, would burn out in hours, but for those hours, Jupiter became a weapon. Radiation that would have taken millions of years to cross space now had a directed purpose. The Council fleet, trapped by their own hyperspace distortions, had nowhere to run. Ships designed to withstand conventional weapons found themselves bathed in stellar radiation. Shields overloaded, hull plating melted, electronics fried. The mighty extinction fleet was being cooked alive. "This is impossible," Krextor whispered, watching his tactical display show ship after ship going dark. "They're primitives. Barbarians." "No," a human voice said over the communication system. Admiral Sarah Chen appeared on his screen, her face calm despite the carnage. "We're survivors. Your mistake was thinking those were different things." "You've destroyed yourselves too," Krextor snarled. "Your system is ruined. Jupiter is gone." Sarah smiled. "Jupiter was never important. It's just gas and gravity. But you know what is important? The message we're sending to the rest of the galaxy. Attack humanity, and we'll burn the stars themselves to stop you." The inevitable victory shuddered as another wave of radiation washed over it. Systems were failing across the ship. In the distance, Earth itself seemed to shimmer. And Krextor realized with dawning horror that the planet was shielded. Everything, The abandoned appearance, the hidden defenses, even Jupiter's transformation had been planned. "How?" he asked. "How did you know we would come here?" "Because you're predictable," Sarah replied. "The Council always goes for the symbolic victory. Earth is our homeworld, so of course you'd attack it first. We counted on your arrogance." She leaned forward. "But here's what you didn't count on. Earth isn't our only world anymore. We have hundreds of colonies, thousands of ships, millions of humans spread across the galaxy. You can't kill us all, but we can make sure that trying costs you everything." The countdown reached 0. Across the galaxy, synchronized with precision that would have impressed even the Council, humanity struck. Not just military targets this time, everything. Council worlds woke to find their infrastructure compromised. Power grids failed. Transportation networks ground to halt. Food distribution collapsed. Not destroyed, humans weren't monsters, but disrupted enough to cause chaos. The careful order the Council had maintained for millennia shattered in a single day. Occupied worlds rose in rebellion, inspired by humanity's example. Species that had submitted to Council authority for generations suddenly remembered what it meant to resist. And through it all, human ships appeared and vanished like ghosts, striking where they were least expected. They had learned from Marcus Chen's example. One human had terrorized a battalion. Now millions were terrorizing an empire. In the Sol system, the battle was ending. Of 300 Council warships, less than 50 remained functional. Admiral Krextor's own ship was dying around him, its proud hull breached in a dozen places. "You have a choice," Admiral Chen said. "Surrender and live, or continue fighting and join your fleet in death. But know this, the war is over. You lost the moment you decided to exterminate us instead of accept us." Krextor looked around his ruined bridge. His warriors were dead or dying. The inevitable victory was inevitably defeated. In his hearts, he knew the human was right. The Council had created its own worst enemy. "I yield," he said, the words bitter as acid. Terms, simple. The Council withdraws from all human territory. You acknowledge our sovereignty, and you spread the word. Humanity is off limits. Attack us again, and next time we won't stop at one star system. The surrender was transmitted across the galaxy. The mighty Galactic Council, which had never known defeat, was forced to accept terms from a species they had dismissed as primitive. In the aftermath, as rescue ships collected survivors and Jupiter slowly burned itself out, philosophers would debate how it had happened. How had humanity, outnumbered and outgunned, brought the Council to its knees? The answer was simple, though few wanted to accept it. The Council had evolved in a galaxy where war followed rules, where civilized species fought in civilized ways. They had forgotten that civilization was a choice, not a requirement. Humans remembered. When faced with extinction, they had reverted to what they truly were, the galaxy's apex predators. They didn't fight fair. They fought to win. Marcus Chen, watching from his hospital bed on Terra Nova, summed it up best in an interview that would be studied by military academies for centuries to come. "People ask me how one wounded sniper changed the course of galactic history," he said. "But I didn't change anything. I just reminded everyone what humans are capable of when you threaten our existence. We're not warriors like the Cravor. We're not strategists like the Morteki. We're not builders like the Altarians. We're survivors, and we'll do whatever it takes to keep surviving." He paused, then added, "The Council's fatal mistake wasn't leaving me alive. It was thinking they could kill what we are. You can kill humans. You can't kill humanity." The new galactic order that emerged was different. The Council still existed, but its power was broken. Species that had been suppressed for millennia found their voices, and at the center of it all was humanity, no longer seeking permission to exist, but demanding recognition as equals. They had earned it in fire and blood, in innovation and adaptation. They had taken the Council's attempt at extinction and turned it into evolution. The memorial on Kepler 442b, where it all began, bears a simple inscription. Here, a wounded sniper taught the galaxy a lesson. Never leave a human alive if you're not prepared for the consequences. Every year, on the anniversary of the Sol Defense, humans across the galaxy observe a moment of silence. Not for the dead, but for the living, for the species that learned the hard way what happens when you back humanity into a corner, and somewhere in the vast expanse of space, the story spreads. A warning to those who would threaten humanity, a promise to those who would be their allies, a reminder that in a galaxy full of ancient powers and advanced civilizations, the most dangerous species might just be the young ones who refuse to know their place. The Galactic Council had made one fatal mistake. They had wounded humanity and left it alive. They would never make that mistake again. But then again, they would never get the chance.